Today I'm going to be talking about a story that's quite special. It's about somebody that inspired me personally to develop not only a better understanding for animals, but also a deeper love for them. And I've been watching him since I was a child. I am talking about, of course, the legendary Steve Irwin. Now, for those of y'all that don't know, Steve Irwin was a legendary Australian wildlife expert, as well as a television personality who was unfortunately fatally attacked by a stingray back in 2006 while filming a series special. So this incident sparked a lot of debate on whether what he was doing was right and about the dangers of interacting with wildlife in general. So the controversy got real. His family was asked to stop doing what they were doing. But I'm going to tell you guys about what happened not only during the attack, but also what happened afterward. Without further ado, let's get into this story. Steve Irwin was just 6 years old when he'd caught his first deadly common brown snake. And although such an encounter would almost certainly send shudders down the spine of even the bravest of fully grown adults, he'd in his later years recall it as the day that ignited within him an unmatched passion for wildlife, sparking the beginning of a lifelong journey to becoming a household name and a beacon of light for the very animals he not just adored, but innately believed to be highly misunderstood. A daredevil like no other, Steve would habitually put himself in situations with some of the most dangerous creatures on the planet, ranging from some of the most feared land mammals to some of the world's most deadliest snakes and spiders. Steve consistently put his own safety on the line to not just help us humans learn more about these amazing animals, but also bring us some of the most jaw-dropping human-animal encounter footage ever recorded. His smash hit TV series, The Crocodile Hunter, would go on an incredible 11-year run on the Discovery Channel, landing it in the channel's second longest running shows list, just behind the top spot in the category held by Mythbusters. In September of 2006, however, tragedy would strike and the world would lose a true legend. It was September 4th of 2006, and Steve had been on a boat with his film crew just off the coast of Port Douglas in Queensland. The group was looking to capture footage of tiger sharks for a new show called the Oceans Deadliest, a show aimed to create an environment in which both current and future generations could marvel at both the beauty as well as the danger of the world's oceans. Whether it was sea snakes, box jellyfish, stingrays, or tiger sharks, animals that would make most people cringe from fear, Steve, on the contrary, would not just be eager, but excited to get in the water with them. As the day went on, the crew was suddenly hit with bad weather, putting a damper on the filming conditions. Steve urges longtime cameraman and best friend, Justin Lyons, to join him on an inflatable and look for something to film. After motoring for just a few minutes, Justin suddenly spots a massive stingray in some shallower waters. Widely considered one of the most fascinating creatures of the ocean, stingrays measure between 7 and 23 feet in length, with a wingspan that can reach up to a whopping 16 feet. Their size allows them to swim as fast as 25 miles per hour, though generally only for short periods of time. That impressive speed is due largely to their ability to use their flexible pectoral fins like wings to help propel them forward in the water. And with a supreme defense mechanism in the form of sharp, venomous barbs that can reach up to 12 inches in length, they are also well equipped to deal rapid and nasty damage to any predators that try them. Realizing that this was a perfect opportunity to capture some footage for Steve's 8-year-old daughter Bindi, who was to host an upcoming wildlife show on the Discovery Kids channel, not to mention the plethora of experience that Steve and his crew had when it came to diving with stingrays, Steve was at this point even more eager to dive in and film the magnificent creature. Little did he know, however, that this would be the last time he would ever be filmed interacting with wild animals. Steve and Justin slip out of the side of the inflatable into about chest-deep water and have a brief chat about how they were going to film, protocol they would commonly go over, especially when filming underwater. Justin would always want whatever animal they were filming to be between Steve and himself in the shot, with the animal dominating the foreground. A few minutes go by, and shortly after capturing some good film, the men resurface from the water and decide on one last shot of Steve swimming up from behind the stingray, while Justin gets a shot of it swimming away. As Steve approaches the stingray from behind, Justin excitedly gets the camera rolling as he notices the footage was perfect for Bindi's documentary. Suddenly, and out of nowhere, the massive bull ray appears to become increasingly agitated with their presence, and before he could react, it abruptly props up on its front and begins stabbing wildly into Steve's chest with its tail over 100 times, in just a few seconds. As Justin continued on filming the stingray as it swam away, he slowly pans back to Steve, at which point he freezes in horror as he notices a large pool of blood surrounding his body. Immediately realizing this was no minor attack based on the amount of blood, and not to mention the fact that this much of it would almost certainly attract sharks, Justin cuts the camera feed and scrambles to help Steve. Steve then stands up out of the water and screams, "It's punctured me lung." The inflatable that had been motoring just a few meters away rushes over to the men, at which point Justin pulls Steve onto it and assesses his wound. He notices a large, 2-inch wide gash over Steve's heart, with blood profusely gushing out from it. The fact that he was visibly in excruciating agony was a clear indication to Justin that the stingray's venom was worsening the already severe pain caused from the kinetic damage from the multiple, rapid stabs he'd endured. As a horrified Justin, who still had hope, tells Steve to hold on, that they were getting him to the hospital, that he would make it out of this, and to think of his kids, a suddenly cool and calm Steve, barely able to speak, then utters to Justin, "I'm dying." The team tried their level best to keep him calm and stable until the medevac helicopter could arrive. But ultimately, and as previously mentioned, the damage to his heart was more extensive than just the kinetic damage, and Steve would eventually succumb to his injuries. Medical reports would later reveal that Irwin not only suffered massive cardiac trauma during the attack, but both his lungs collapsed, with fragments of bone piercing into nearby vessels. Investigators also noted that the fact that Steve was even able to stay conscious and speak until finally succumbing to his injuries was remarkable given the extent of them, indicating just how strong his undeniably big heart truly was. While many people heard of his untimely passing through media sources, his wife Terry would receive the news in a much more heartbreaking way. She'd been radioed in from a trip she was on with the kids in Tasmania. She was asked to hurry to the Australian zoo and was informed that Steve had been seriously injured. It wasn't until she arrived at the zoo that a zoo employee would then reveal to her the tragic news of her husband's passing. Although it would be world-shattering for any wife to hear such news, Terry handled the situation gracefully and with strength, carrying on in the tradition that Steve had set, which was to promote the conservation and the love for all animals, as well as spread happiness and hope wherever possible. Steve had always told his camera crew that even if he were to be attacked by an animal during a shoot, that they were to keep the film rolling, and even if it resulted in his death, he always stressed the importance of getting the event on film. And although the tragic and not to mention gruesome footage was indeed captured by Justin, it would afterwards only be used for investigative purposes and would never be released to the public at the request of Steve's family. This tragic incident marked just the third fatal stingray attack in Australian waters since 1945. The other two victims, like Irwin, had both suffered fatal wounds to the chest as well. The knowledge of just how rare human fatalities by stingray are undoubtedly made the cause of Steve's death that much more tragic. Nobody would have guessed that it would be a stingray of all creatures, ones who were typically shy and evasive, to end the legendary Steve Irwin's life, especially when one considers the much more dangerous animal encounters he was accustomed to. Of course, it was never a sure thing that Steve would die by the hands of one of the very animals that he adored, but it also wasn't far-fetched for many to assume that this was a possibility, and to some, even an inevitability. Regardless of what people said or thought, we can all be certain of one thing. Steve would never have stopped doing what he loved, even if he'd survived this attack. And what's even more certain, never would he have blamed any animal for doing what came natural to them. A true indicator of the unconditional love and deep understanding that he had for them. In the wake of his death, Steve would leave behind his grieving wife Terry and two young children, aforementioned 8-year-old Bindi, as well as his son Robert, who was just 2 years old at the time of his father's passing. In tribute to her late father, Bindi would go on to win Dancing with the Stars and dedicate her life to continuing his legacy. Her brother Robert would grow up to launch the Steve Irwin Wildlife Reserve in 2019, located on Australia's Cape York Peninsula. The Irwin family continues to carry on his legacy despite massive criticism of their willingness to subject themselves to the potential risks and dangers that come with interacting with some of the world's most deadliest animals.